the joke doesn't land so much as crack down the middle of the table. His mother's dining room is too warm, and Evan raises his glass like a host about to honor someone he loves. To Lainey, he says, stretching my name so everyone hears the punchline coming, for keeping it thrifty on that teacher salary, discount life premium heart. He laughs first to show them how. I'm holding a hot dish. My name is Lainey Hart. I can quiet a room of 7th graders with a lifted eyebrow. This quiet feels different. His sisters tack their laughter onto his. His mother smiles with the practiced sharpness of someone who treasures efficiency like an heirloom. I set the casserole down and hear the pan kiss the trivet. It's a small sound that climbs my arms. I smile because there isn't a script for correcting a husband in his mother's house without becoming the spectacle. Thanks, I say lightly. In the doorway, our daughter leans into the frame. Wren is 11. The laughter pulled her from the den. She looks at me first, taking the temperature. I give the tiniest nod that means I'm upright, which is not the same as okay. Evan keeps going. I swear she saves the sleeves from coffee cups, he says, and forks skitter against china. Teacher muscle. Makes 30 feel like 50. The numbers are wrong, but the math he's doing is performance, not accounting. You know what I love, his sister Dawn says. Teachers. So patient. The word lands like a hand on the head. Patience is a budget with feelings I say mostly to myself. Hey now, Evan says, smile tightening. No need to get serious. It's family. Which is another way to say there are rules here you didn't write. We sit. His mother does the blessing. A centerpiece candle sits unlit between silk leaves. Evan slides an arm around my waist for the audience. Don't take it personally, he murmurs. I don't answer. The person in his sentence is a version of me he prefers, grateful for the joke. Plates travel. Dawn asks if my students still do the tick-tock. I tell her I teach them to read each other kindly. She laughs, as if kindness were a fad. Wren's voice arrives as if she's practiced saying one true thing. Dad, she says, and he looks up because he loves the title more than whatever follows. Dad, why did you move my college money into the secret account? For half a second, I forget how to breathe. Evan does too. Every plate becomes a mirror. What account, his mother asks, bright and sharp. Wren doesn't blink. The one on your tablet, she says. The password you've used since Uncle Nate's bachelor party. It popped up. I wasn't snooping. The notification had my name. The old scar on my wrist wakes under the skin onion dull knife hurry. I look at it because it's mine and uncomplicated. Evan laughs too loudly too late. She's a kid, he says. She doesn't understand. There are transfers for taxes, investments. And you shouldn't be on people's devices. It was unlocked. She says so quietly the sentence lands heavier than a shout. His mother turns her gaze on me as if we're negotiating a treaty. Surely this is a misunderstanding, Lainey. Surely is a scaffolding word. Surely a girl misread. Surely a mother is oversensitive. Surely family equals safety. I don't want to argue, I say. I want to eat. We can talk at home. It's fine, Evan says, quickly reclaiming the microphone. A misread notification. Wren spends too much time online. Dad, Wren says smaller now. Please don't lie about me. The tremor shows up in his forehand, a bell sound against the plate. He sets it down. His face goes clay pale. He is switching strategies mid-scene. Okay, he says softly. Let's not do this here. We already have. Bells don't unring. Conversation tries to restart and fails. Dawn asks for beans. A cousin offers a football joke that dies before it's born. The unlit candle throws off a ribbon of smoke when someone brushes past. I eat because my hands need a task. Dinner can be a mercy, chew, swallow, breathe. Evan touches my shoulder in a way that reads as tender from across the room. Up close, his fingers are cold. When the plates are empty enough, I clear them. In the kitchen, I find my blue mug tucked behind the gravy boat where I left it last month, chipped lip steady handle. I rinse it and feel a line reappear in me. I can do kindness without converting it to debt. At the sink window, the porch light stutters. Somewhere behind me, his mother tells his sisters that young people overreact. I dry my hands and leave the mug to air. In the foyer, coats bloom off hooks. Wren slips her palm into mine. It's hot with adrenaline. I'm sorry, she whispers. For telling the truth, I ask. Don't apologize for that. Evan appears with the keys. Let's go, he says. His mother hovers. We'll sort this, she tells him, but her eyes measure me like a spill to be contained. Outside, the night stings my teeth. The door clicks behind us. The car hums. I start the engine. We sit in the kind of silence that is work. Wren speaks first. I can show you when we get home, she says, if you want. I believe you, I tell her. The sentence is a doorway. I choose which side to stand on. Evan stares ahead, knuckles pale. You put her up to that, he says, finally. No, I say. She has her own eyes. She's 11, and she told one true thing. He exhales through his nose. We'll talk at home, he repeats. We will, I say. The porch light flickers and then holds. On the drive, a grocery bag whispers with each break. Evan's phone pulses once face down in the cup holder. I don't look. My wrist catches the dash light, reminding me apply pressure, then release. At a red light, Wren asks, do you think Grandma hates us? I think Grandma loves the story where everything looks perfect from her porch, I say. We don't fit that story tonight. Do we ever? She asks. Sometimes I say. Sometimes we write our own. Home smells like laundry. The candle on our table is squat and ugly in a way I like. I strike a match and don't light it. I hold the sulfur a second and blow it out. Smoke lifts, then thins. Evan unlocks the door and steps in first. Wren nudges my hip, asking without words if I'm still with her. I nod. We cross the threshold together, and I feel the floor accept our weight. The blue mug waits in the drying rack where I left it last night, chipped and steady, the size of a plan I'm not ready to say out loud. I turn off the kitchen light and listen to the house teach me it's quiet. What exactly did she see, and how long had she been holding it? Wren sits behind me, both hands around her seatbelt. I keep my eyes on the road hands at 10 and 2, the steering wheel a drum I refuse to hit. Tell me slowly, I say. It popped up on Dad's tablet, she says. When he went to get pie. A notification from North River Credit Union. It said, transfer complete $2,000 from Ren 529 to Summit Reserve. It had my name. I wasn't snooping. Evan's laugh comes out flat. See consolidation, custodial move, tax advantaged. You both are overreacting. His language is calm the way ice is calm. In the mirror, the porch light at his mother's house flickers, then steadies a heartbeat, deciding to continue. The scar along my wrist wakes with a small throb. The dull knife, the onion, the rush of red, and the instruction I learned: apply pressure. Release when the blood remembers its paths. How many times, I ask? 3, Wren says. Maybe 4. Since July. What dates, Evan asks. So I can, you know the dates, she says. The grocery bag whispers with every break. I want to turn and hold my daughter's face. I want to keep us out of a story about a car idling under a streetlight. So I do the adult thing I drive, and I listen. I'm not mad at you, I say. Thank you for telling me. I didn't want to ruin dinner, she says. Dinner did that on its own, I say. It's all the same pot, he says. Summit Reserve is a sub-account. There's strategy here. You're making it sound secret, I offer. He exhales. Complicated. Then we'll simplify, I say. Tomorrow morning we sit down, line by line. Where it went. Why? Tonight, Wren says softly. Tomorrow I repeat. Tonight everyone's throats are made of glass. We turn onto our street. Our porch light is steady. Through the kitchen window I can see the stubby candle on the table wick bent like a question mark. Inside I say, pajamas and teeth. After that we put the problem on the table and let it look small beside us. Wren nods. Evan doesn't move. You coming? I ask. I need air, he says. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. I take the keys from the ignition. The car falls into honest dark. The front door grumbles when I open it. We cross the threshold. Wren's footsteps go soft down the hall. Water starts in the bathroom, a small, reliable river. Evan lingers at the doorway between living room and kitchen. You primed her, he says. You used her to get at me. You give me too little credit and too much malice. I say, setting my purse in its place because routine is a ladder out of panic. I take my blue mug from the rack thumb, the chip set it near the sink. If I wanted to get at you there, I'd have been precise, not surprised. She had details. Because the notification had her name, I say, and because she pays attention. He scrubs his face. This is a timing issue. Money moves to catch a bonus, then goes back. You don't know how this works. At whose expense does it work, I ask. He barks a laugh. At no one's. You hate that I handle money better. I hate that our daughter's name lit up on a device I don't share, and your first concern was embarrassment. I look at the candle and don't light it. Tomorrow I say again. After breakfast. We open the laptop. We call the credit union on speaker. We make the account whole if it isn't. We change what needs changing. And if it's already fine, then we look together, I say. And the looking will be the point. He watches me. You're making a scene, and we're alone. I'm making a plan, I say. Scenes end. Plans continue. Wren appears at the hallway edge, socks, mismatched hair damp from her quick wash. She stands with her toes on the line where carpet gives way to tile. Good night, she asks. Come here, I say. She does, and I press my palm to the back of her head. We're okay, I tell her. We're writing it down tomorrow. Promise I don't break promises, I say out loud. She exhales and peels away. Can I leave the little house light on tonight? It keeps watch. She disappears into her room. Evan stares at the blue mug. I still might go for a drive. You can sit, I say. You can be angry and sit. You can be disappointed and sit. But you don't leave. He picks up his keys, sets them down, picks them up again, metal chattering like teeth. Finally, he places them on the counter. Fine, he says. Tomorrow. I nod. The word draws a straight line in the air like chalk on a board. He moves to the couch and lowers himself. I rinse the mug, feel the nicked rim catch my thumb. My wrist hums quiet pressure release. I dry the mug and leave it upright to collect the clean. When the house decides we're done, I sit at the table with a pad. I write 3 columns, account date, amount. You don't trust me, he says. I am choosing to trust paper, I say, and the person I am when I read it. You'll see, he says. Maybe I say. Wren's door clicks. The little house nightlight throws a square of gold into the hall. I think about his mother's centerpiece candle, unlit among silk leaves, a decoration pretending to be warmth. There are rooms where flame is welcome only if it changes nothing. Our kitchen doesn't mind change. It minds the way smoke clings to lies. I strike a match, watch the sulfur bloom, then blow it out. 8 a.m., I say into the room. Before work. Evan nods, and for a second his face is the man who once held a thrifted denim jacket to my shoulders and said I looked like the sun. Then the second closes. I slide the pad under the candle and leave the pen on top. A small, still life wick paper ink. I turn off the kitchen light. The doorway stands like a frame around nothing. I rub the scar on my wrist not to erase it, but to remember what saved me pressure, then release. I won't let morning file this down to a misunderstanding. Passing Wren's room, I hear the small sleep sigh that says her body is outpacing her mind. At the couch, Evan turns onto his side. I pull the throw over him because kindness is mine to keep without turning into debt. In my room, I sit on the bed edge and breathe until the ache in my chest grows borders. The blue mug will wait for morning, and morning will be asked to witness. I slide under the covers and let the house hold the quiet. Somewhere down the hall, the little house light keeps its promise. North River summit columns and dates words for tomorrow. Tonight, I keep only one door. What was the first small shift the moment when warmth became weather I had to brace for? If I pull the line back, I find a soft door and a laugh that sounded like home. We met in late August in a coffee shop with secondhand chairs and a ceiling fan that clicked every third turn. I was grading pre-tests with a blue pen when he asked for the seat across from me. 7th grade, he said, already smiling. I told him I liked the chaos before the shapes showed. He laughed like someone relieved to hear a sentence he didn't know he'd been missing. Our first date was a thrift store wander. He lifted a faded denim jacket and said, I looked like the sun in it. We ate tacos in a parking lot and mapped our families his holidays big and right, mine small and sincere. He said big and right could learn small and sincere. Help arrived early and wore kindness. He tightened a loose chair, left his screwdriver on the counter like a calling card, set up a shared calendar, and taught it to color code. Let me handle the boring parts, he said. You do the magic. It was easy to let someone read me as tired and worthy of relief. Marriage made the apartment a house, and the house learned his language. He loved numbers the way I love sentences. He built a spreadsheet with tabs for groceries, gifts, insurance, savings. It's simpler if one person steers, he said, and I nodded because simpler looked like rest. When our daughter Wren was born in deep winter, he labeled drawers and folded swaddles like flags. My mother folded towels in thirds. He refolded them into halves after she left. Small rules can look like love at first. The first time I lit a candle after a long conference night, cheap vanilla more smoke than scent. He kissed my hair and pinched the wick dark. Fire risk, he said, already aligning spice jars. I told myself the room didn't need flame to be warm. Edits arrived as good advice. I'll take the bills. Skip book club, you look exhausted. He teased me in public in ways people mistake for intimacy. Laney lives for commas, he'd say. If I didn't flinch, maybe he'd stop needing the laugh. He read my composure as permission. Wren grew steady as a hand through crib bars. He tucked her in like a man auditioning for fatherhood and winning the role. Mornings he placed coffee in my blue mug and said, fuel for the front lines, as if home were battle and I was his favorite soldier. His family ran on ceremony and efficiency. Sunday dinners meant a pantry labeled to the centimeter and a hostess with a general's timing. We keep it efficient, she told me, and I understood that in this house, love had to be stackable. Money first argued with us in the language of logistics. A field trip reminder came home because the deposit hadn't posted. I moved funds for a better yield, he said. It's covered. Tell me next time, I said. He called me diligent like it was praise and a category, and I put the reminder in the trash. Kindness never left. That's part of why I stayed confused. He lifted Wren at the parade, sat on the floor when the washer flooded drove the long way under meeting trees. But kindness isn't the cure for control. Often, it is the camouflage. At school, I teach kids to separate a claim from the evidence that pretends to support it. At home, I practiced with a different vocabulary. I'm just better with money, he'd say. Let me. It's easier if one person manages the calendar. I started a quiet list in my phone, times I pretended not to notice. Times I swallowed a doorway and called it a room. The scar on my wrist arrived on a Tuesday cabinet latch hurry mixing bowl. I pressed a towel and watched the red bloom and slow. I learned a rule my body trusted: pressure first. Release when the blood remembers its path. The pale line remains. I touch it when plans try to talk over truth. There were clearings. Evenings when Wren read from the couch and Evan asked good questions. Nights when the house exhaled and I believed in bridges again. Love existed, but it had to pass through too many filters to reach me without sediment. One fall evening grading essays on failure, I noticed I hadn't failed in a while because I wasn't allowed to try anything that could go wrong. I lit the neglected candle. A thin light stood up. My shoulders dropped. Evan walked in and pinched it dark. "You'll thank me when we don't burn down," he said, nudging the thermostat toward his comfort. Control didn't shout. It rearranged the furniture and called it help. We skipped my book club for his boss's dinner. We cut the restaurant I loved as indulgent. I stopped inviting colleagues because he preferred house-ready company. He liked me best when the edges that made me mine were tucked clean. If you ask why I didn't redraw the map sooner, I could hand you respectable reasons. New mother tired, 2 schedules braided, a paycheck stretched like a gymnast. Truer, I was building a room inside myself where my voice could keep its shape. I told fewer jokes so I could hear the ones I still believed. By the time we stood at his mother's table and Wren said one true thing, the crack had been forming for years, like a hairline in a plate you keep washing gently. You can love a dish and still admit it won't survive the oven. When I set down the casserole and heat traveled up my arms, I recognized a feeling from the wrist pressure first, then the promise of release. I saw the centerpiece candle unlit among silk leaves decoration pretending to be warmth. I saw the doorway hold Wren's shoulders as if it had been waiting for them. I think now of the denim jacket, the parking lot tacos, the screwdriver left like proof of competence, and I don't throw them away. They are true and incomplete. So is the blue mug nicked and steady. So is the phone list that began with one line and grew teeth. The story doesn't need villains to make sense. It needs a narrator willing to stop smoothing it. Warmth didn't turn to weather all at once. It turned in increments, one pinch at a time, until the room remembered it had a window. I'm not afraid of flame. I'm careful with it. The wick in me didn't die. It learned to wait. When Wren asked tonight if we ever fit Grandma's porch story, I told her sometimes we write our own. That began long before the toast, and the way his face went clay pale when truth stood up. It began with a small candle after a hard day, and a hand that thought safety meant silence. I relit that candle in me by choosing the quiet that isn't obedience, the quiet that takes notes. When did suggestions become rules? And why did my body understand them before my mouth did? I can name examples the way a teacher pulls extra pens from a drawer, ordinary until you notice they only write in one color. Send me the receipt when you're done, became text me a photo at the register, then I'll order ahead so it's on the card with points. Let me grab the mail turned into him, sorting it at the island and placing anything addressed to me beneath the coupons. "Do you want help with your grades?" was offered like candy and tucked away like a leash. He didn't lay down laws. He laid out helpful paths. The pink blouse for back-to-school night, he'd say it reads, "Friendly. Friendly is lovely until it means less of you. Skip book club. You come home wired." Wired meant alive with ideas that weren't his. "Don't invite Cynthia. She stirs the pot." Cynthia asked sharp questions. I started canceling before anyone could be disappointed. The thermostat learned his number. The calendar learned to serve the job that paid more. Wren's lunchbox learned apples keep better than peaches because peaches leak and leaking looks like mess. I make notes because I am a note maker. At school, I flag pages. At home, I opened my phone and titled a file, "Rules Written in Air." It felt dramatic for 30 seconds until the list gave me something to push against. First entries. February 7th pinched candle after conference night said, "Fire risk." March 19th replaced my shampoo with something gentler said. The other was harsh. April 3rd asked me to forward receipts for the spreadsheet. I wasn't collecting evidence. I was collecting weather, patterns, the way the house anticipated my choices and laid a softer rug over them until my feet forgot the floor had changed. One afternoon, I stared at my blue mug the way you notice a student quietly holding up the whole group. Chipped steady heat without bragging. I washed it, set it by the sink, and timed with my breath how long it took the ceramic to cool. That was the day I tested the candle to lighting it and letting it burn to the label. The wax tunneled, the wick guttered. Store-bought vanilla tried and failed to name us. A stubborn thread of flame fought to stay. I didn't pinch it out. When I told Evan the students I worried most about were the ones who never misbehaved, he said I liked trouble because it entertained me. I told him I liked life, which refuses to be neat. He kissed my hair without hearing me. He isn't a villain. He is a man who believes tidy means safe because it once worked on his childhood chaos. He thinks numbers are the kind of truth you can touch. He doesn't notice when a woman goes quiet if the budget's balance. "Text me when you arrive," he'd say more often than needed. "Don't wear white to the picnic. Grass stains are impossible. Use my card for school supplies. Better cash back. Alone they are care. Together they braid into a rope you don't see until it tugs." Sometimes I pushed back. "I'll wear the green dress," I'd say. He'd tilt his head. "It's a little much for a parent night." Much was worse than wrong. Much meant visible. He started proofreading my emails for tone. He rarely changed words, only rhythm, and rhythm is where voice lives. When I sent a thank you note without his edits, he said it read defensive. I reread it and heard only me. I made a second list times I said no, and the house kept standing. June 12th, wore the white dress to the picnic. The grass stayed on the lawn. July 8th, went to book club, came home lit up and slept fine. August 21st, handled the field trip cash with bills from my wallet. The world did not wobble. The list was small and private. It felt like a paper candle. Wren noticed more than we intended. She is a watcher. She knows which drawer squeaks and which question makes adults lie. She asks once, "Does Dad like you best when you're quiet?" I say, "I like me best when I'm clear." Not an answer. A promise to myself spoken sideways so I won't scare us. His mother's house trained us in polite on top, sharp underneath. She believed efficiency was love with its hair brushed. I learned to stack dishes her way, one hand under one hand, over edges aligned. Her praise arrived when I made work disappear. Evan grew up graded on how quickly he could make a woman's labor invisible. He got an A. I began failing the assignment on purpose. Money turned airy, too. He stopped leaving receipts. He photographed them and binned the paper. He said my bank app stressed me out. He could run balances better from the dashboard. I asked for the login. He said we'd reset it together and forgot 3 times. I didn't force it. I wrote September 10th, asked for login postponed. At a routine physical, the nurse asked if I felt safe at home. I said yes, then added most days. She looked up. Write yourself notes, she said, so you believe yourself when it's loud. I went home and slid an empty shoebox onto the closet shelf. Line up all the soft commands end to end, and they won't look like offense because he left the gate open and smiled. That's the trick. You can leave any time if you don't mind being wrong for wanting air beyond the gate. The lists let me measure the wind. They let me name the breeze as draft and then as weather, and then on clear days simply as mine. The night before the dinner and the toast and the sentence that made his fork ring, I stood at our kitchen table and lit the candle again. The wick hesitated, then steadied. I set my blue mug beside it and watched heat gather. The house didn't protest. I wrote October 15th, burned candle to the label, left it. Flames stood up. I didn't know I was practicing. I only knew the room looked truer lit by something I chose. Later in his mother's polished world, when he raised his glass and turned my salary into a party trick, I recognized the tone. It was a rule written in air, translated for an audience stay small, and we'll call it charming. I set the casserole down and listened to the pan kiss the trivet and thought of my lists, my wrist, my mug, my blue dot. No more rules I couldn't see. The thought wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It stood like a door with the light on behind it, waiting for a hand. The next morning would be columns and calls on speaker and the credit union redirecting funds like a river returned to its old bed. That's still ahead. Here in the cataloging past, I'll tell you I was already moving. The candle in me wasn't decoration. It was heat light ceremony. It didn't ask for a parade. It asked for a steady surface and a match I was willing to strike. I had both. What is the shape of proof when feelings have already taken sides? Paper is colder than a fight. That's why I went looking for it. After Wren fell asleep and Evan pretended to, I sat at the kitchen table with my blue mug and a legal pad, the candle unlit by choice. Smoke is too dramatic for numbers. I opened my laptop and signed into the accounts that still knew my name. North River Credit Union greeted me with blue and white calm, a dashboard designed to lower heart rates. Checking first, then savings, then the joint account. I wrote balances in neat rows because neatness steadies me. I clicked the 529 link and went past the cheerful graduation caps into the ledger itself. Deposits, interest, transfers, the ordinary reign of a plan. There it was, Summit Reserve. The words appeared again, a quiet siren. Transfer complete. Transfer complete. Transfer complete. The hair along my arms rose not from surprise, but recognition, like hearing the same wrong note played by different instruments. I didn't screenshot. Screenshots are for arguments. I printed because paper is unhurried and stackable. Each page came out warm. I dated them in pencil, slid them into a manila envelope, and wrote in the corner, Ren 529 Ledger. Ink is for declarations. Pencil is for decisions you reserve the right to revise. The printer quit. In the hall closet behind winter scarves and empty shoebox waited the one I'd placed there after the nurse asked if I felt safe at home. I filled it. North River Transfers. I labeled the second envelope. From the couch, Evan cleared his throat, a question disguised as sleep. I stayed quiet. Silence can be a wound or a tool. Tonight it was a tool. Back at the table, my wrist grazed the pad's edge. The scar hummed its old instruction pressure, then release. Paper would be the pressure. Release would come later. Credit cards next. 3 I knew. A 4th I didn't kept awake with small charges and punctuated by larger ones, aligned with holidays at his mother's. Paper receipts had gone inefficient. The dashboard told a tidier story than my memory did. I cross-checked the dates with our shared calendar, the one he manages, because one person steering is simpler. The withdrawals lined up with afternoons labeled errands with Mom, and the same week he'd floated a weekend getaway I declined. Simpler for whom I wrote in the margin, then erased it, because I wanted the page to be cleaner than my temper. I could already hear the reasonable tone yield optimization short-term float trust the process. Processes are only as good as the people they invite to disappear. I wasn't trying to catch him in a lie. I was trying to see our life without the flattering light. In my notes app, I typed Ask About Summit. 4th card payroll portal login, wire notifications only to his device. I flipped the phone face down and drew 3 boxes on the legal pad account, date, amount. A simple architecture. Around midnight, the refrigerator clicked. The house lowered itself to the night. I lit the candle, then one strike a small pill of light and set it at the table's edge like a quiet witness. The flame didn't make a speech. It kept watch. I opened a new document and wrote a plain sentence on October 16th. I reviewed transfers from Wren's 529 and found 3 to an account labeled Summit Reserve. I added dates. I added that Wren saw a notification at her grandmother's. I added that Evan called it consolidation. I saved it with a file name I could find after a fire. The bathroom light came on. Wren padded to the doorway between hallway dark and kitchen glow. "Mom," she whispered. "I'm here," I said. "Okay," she said, and went back to bed. The little house nightlight carved out its square of gold. Evan appeared, hair mussed eyes narrow. He took in the printer, the envelopes, the shoebox. "You're escalating," he said. "I'm documenting," I said. Same tone. "It isn't. This is the tone of later. You can't make a case file out of a marriage. I can make a record out of money," I said, "the gentlest way to hold the line. You don't trust me." "I'm learning to trust myself first," I said. "It's new. Give me time." He left muttering about sleep. When the house quieted again, I opened North River's chat and asked neutral questions. Are custodial withdrawals visible to both account owners? What is Summit Reserve internal or external? Can notifications go to all owners? A representative named Bree answered in careful sentences. Custodial withdrawals require forms. Summit Reserve appears to be an external checking account linked via ACH. Notifications can be sent to all owners upon request. Would I like to add a contact? She verified my identity with questions only I would know from the day I opened Wren's first savings jar. I passed. She couldn't tell me who initiated transfers, only that they weren't automatic. Paper trail available upon written request. I thanked her. I saved and printed the transcript. I thought of his mother's centerpiece candle unlit among silk leaves decoration pretending to be warmth, and of the way she looked at me as if I were a spill to be contained. There are people who believe quiet is what you give them, not what you keep. Tonight I kept it. I put the pages in the shoebox and slid it behind the scarves. Inside the lid I penciled, "Not an ambush." A map. Future me will understand. I washed my blue mug, watching the water cool from hot to honest. I blew out the candle and let the smoke rise and vanish. The dark didn't invade. It arrived like something finally allowed. Before bed I stood in Wren's doorway and listened to her breathe 11 that border where the child and the person switch shifts. There are nights when being a mother feels like being a lighthouse that also needs a lighthouse. Tonight, the little house nightlight was enough. In bed, Evan's back faced my side. The scar along my wrist cooled against the sheet. I named tomorrow the way you lay out clothes call North River for the paper trail. Reset joint logins, put Summit Reserve on the table without adjectives, invite the numbers to stand in their own shoes. If he has an honest story, I'll hear it better this way. If he doesn't, I'll hear that too. I didn't sleep fast. Vigilance isn't always anxiety. Sometimes it's care. When sleep came, it was the clean quiet after a bell stops ringing. Morning would pour coffee into the blue mug, and I would keep my promise to Wren we would write it down and let the paper hold what our faces couldn't. The doorway to the kitchen would still be there. We would decide who crossed. What starts the quiet shift from hoping he'll explain to assuming he won't. For me, it was a Tuesday hallway and a question to our school counselor because my mouth could bear it and my chest could not. If a student told you their parent moved money with their name on it and the other parent doesn't know where it went, I asked, what would you tell me to tell the student Mara didn't look surprised? She kept her voice at the volume we use for hurt we're not allowed to name. Her office is calm on purpose. I sat in the chair for parents and held my blue mug. I didn't tell Mara everything. She's my colleague, not my confessor, but I gave her the shape. Sometimes a professional just points you toward the next sturdy thing. Document contemporaneously, she said, writing the phrase on a sticky note with a small door and light. Write what happens when and how you responded. Later won't have to argue with earlier, then softer. You're not the first mother with that look. You won't be the last. Contemporaneously felt like a smooth stone, odd, solid, useful. I pocketed it like a shell a student brings to prove a creek exists. When the bell rang, I taught transitional phrases at my desk and privately added a new one at the same time you're being smiled at something else is asking for paper. At lunch, I drove to the credit union where the pens are chained and the carpet hushes mistakes. I'd like to open an individual checking account, I told the teller. My hands did not shake. She slid me forms and traced a path like a teacher who wants you to show your work. Name, address, identification, initial deposit. Any joint owners, she asked. No, I said, and the words stood up without wobbling. I signed with the cursive my grandmother taught me. The teller stapled the welcome brochure like fastening a small flag. Alerts to your device, she asked. Yes. My phone buzzed a test. Welcome Laney. Heart. For a second I felt disloyal to the man who once held a thrift store jacket to my shoulders and called me the sun. Then the second passed. Loyalty to a person isn't the same as obedience to a pattern. At a red light, I touched the scar on my wrist and remembered the rule my body wrote pressure, then release. Opening the account was pressure pressing on the wound so it stops hiding the hurt. Release would be decisions made later from steadier ground. After last bell, I wrote Mara's phrase in the corner of a fresh page and noted the talk the time I left campus, the teller's name, the account type, the first deposit. It read like a telegram to a future I hoped wouldn't need it. I slid the page into the shoebox behind the scarves that has stopped being hypothetical and started being a file. At home, I made pasta because starch is Switzerland. Wren grated cheese with the careful seriousness of someone trying not to nick her knuckles. You meant it right, she asked. About writing it down, I told her where the box lives and that we don't keep stomach ache secrets. Even me, especially you. I drew a tiny house in the corner of her homework, the same doorway Mara sketched so any note that needed light could carry some. Is Dad going to be mad? She asked. He's going to have feelings, I said. So are we. Feelings are weather reports. Facts are what we spell on paper. We ate with the candle unlit. Evan came home later than his text predicted, set a bouquet on the counter and a box for a weekend I hadn't asked for. "You two deserve something nice," he said, tuned to benevolence. "We deserve something clear," I said. "Tomorrow after dinner we go through the accounts together. I've started a list. That night I rehearsed neutral sentences on an index card. Please put that in writing. Let's look at the ledger. I prefer speakerphone. I am not signing anything tonight." The next day I used my planning period to call a legal clinic that takes Tuesday walk-ins in the downtown library basement. The woman sounded tired and kind. "Bring your documents," she said. "Write a short timeline. Don't wait for a worse night to make a plan on a good day." After dismissal, I told Evan I had curriculum prep and drove to the library. A volunteer gave me forms. When my turn came, a lawyer with steady eyes read while I talked. I told it badly and also well facts first, then the parts without names. He used words that didn't need drama. "Separate account is smart," he said. "Keep documenting. Ask for joint access in writing. If funds left a custodial account without your consent, there's a process to cure it. Don't threaten. Send requests a judge would like to read. You're not accusing, you're auditing. Auditing another smooth stone." He printed a template. "I request full access credentials to all household accounts, including but not limited to..." "Send it to him and to yourself," he said, "so the request has a timestamp no one owns but you. Keep your voice plain," he added, like after a fire drill when you've got 20 kids and one exit. On my way out, the librarian handed me a flyer for Money Basics for Women. I wanted to take offense. I took relief instead. Information isn't an indictment. It's a light you can carry. At home, Wren was building a blanket fort. "Want in?" she asked. We crawled under. "No stomach ache secrets," she said, testing the rule. "No stomach ache secrets," I echoed. Evan peered in. "Password?" he asked. "Honesty," Wren said, and let him crawl in too. We lay there under a roof we made with our hands. For 5 minutes we were only a family with a light breathing the same air. At the hallway outlet, Wren's little house glowed. I stood in her doorway and thought about the doors inside the day Mara's office, the credit union's sliding glass, the library basement, the blanket fort, the closet with the shoebox. Doors can keep people out. They can also frame a path you're willing to walk. Back in the kitchen, I lit the candle not for comfort, for witness. I set my new debit card beside it to get used to the sight. The scar along my wrist was quiet. I wrote the short timeline the lawyer asked for, kept my verbs simple, dated the page, slid it into the box. Then I washed my blue mug and left it upside down on the rack, a small roof over a small circle of air. So what starts the quiet shift from hoping he'll explain to assuming he won't? Today it was pieces, a sticky note that taught me how to hold time, a teller who handed me my own signature, a stranger who gave me sentences that stand without apology, and a child who learned to name the ache that tells the truth. It didn't feel like a fight. It felt like learning which silence belongs to me. How do you draw a line in a house without tape? I started with a sentence plain enough to stand on its own feet. After school, while Wren finished a math worksheet at the kitchen table and the candle kept watch without flame, I opened my laptop and wrote the email the lawyer had sketched for me with his steady eyes. I request full access credentials to all household accounts, including but not limited to checking, savings, credit, payroll, and college funds. Please reply in writing with usernames and the most recent statements. I added dates and account names so it read like a grocery list, not a threat. I CC'd myself because timestamps are small anchors. I printed a copy, penciled the date, and slid it into the shoebox behind the winter scarves. When Evan came in, he set a bag on the counter loud enough to mean generosity. takeout chopsticks in their paper sleeves, the smell of salt and apology. Peace offering, he said. I set plates because people need to eat, even when the air between them feels like it remembers a storm. We ate with our faces undecorated. After I put the dishes away and left the laptop open on the counter like a bowl waiting to be filled, we're changing how the money works. I said not as a question. Separate cards, shared calendar entries for any transfer that touches Ren, calls on speaker, no unilateral moves. He laughed first to set the tone, then softened his face to show he could be tender. Lainey, sweetheart, you're hurt. I get it, but you're taking a hammer to a squeaky hinge. No, I said the first time. It didn't feel brave. It felt like stepping onto a floor I built. This isn't a hinge. It's a door. He tilted his head, searching for the old script. You don't understand how the accounts ladder. Let me explain without the drama. No, I said the second time without ornament. Explain with documents. He tried wounded. You think I'd steal from my own kid? I think our kid's name lit up on a device I don't share, I said. And I think you like the version of me who doesn't ask for logins. He pushed the takeout away and leaned forward as if proximity could change the pitch of my voice. Let me make it up to you. Weekend away. Just us. We need air. No, I said the third cleanest time. We need accuracy. The word hung there, a level placed on a shelf to see what tilts. He looked past me at the dead candle, then at the doorway, where Ren had paused, testing whether grown-ups knew she was there. I met her eyes and gave the smallest nod. She padded to the hallway and left us the room. Fine, he said, switching masks the way some people change channels. What does your new system look like? Shared calendar with real notes. My own card for my own purchases, no commentary. Alerts to both phones for any custodial account activity, and you reply to my email with all current credentials. I lifted my phone. I already asked North River to add me to notifications. He smirked at the phone as if it were a substitute for nerve. Power move. Shared information, I said. Different thing. He stood to pace the old rhythm, returning big gestures to fill a space that had stopped listening. I reached for the router under the console and pressed the pinhole with a paper clip until the lights blinked a little constellation. I changed the Wi-Fi password and wrote the new one on an index card. I set it by the blue mug. I did it slow, so I would remember I didn't need to ask permission to secure the air inside my house. Really, he said, incredulous. New passwords, I said, and a note so none of us are locked out. That's the rule here now. If you can't share it, you can't run it. He rolled his eyes so hard I heard them. You've been talking to people. I've been talking to myself, I said. And listening. He skimmed his email on his phone because the silence wouldn't do what he wanted. I'll send you what you asked for, he said finally. But you're making a mountain. Mountains aren't made by asking to see the ground, I said. He answered with a sigh he uses when he wants me to hear that I'm exhausting. I could feel the old reflex soothe patch joke rise and pass like a wave that can't find purchase on new sand. I rinsed the blue mug. The nick on the rim caught my thumb a small bell. In the doorway, Ren hovered, asking without words if it was safe to step back in. We're done for tonight, I told them both. Tomorrow after homework, we'll call North River on speaker and ask for the paper trail. Tonight we clean the kitchen. Ren came to the sink and bumped my hip like a seal. Side by side, we moved plates into the washer, wiped the counter-stacked takeout boxes. Evan collected chopstick wrappers and stood unsure where to put his hands. It is disorienting when the air stops bending for you. After the kitchen, I pulled a small paper bag from the hall closet. Help me with something, I said to Ren. We went to the front door. The wall to the right had a bare patch I've stared at for months, the kind of absence that's a plan if you're patient. From the bag, I took a brass hook curved like a question mark and a short screwdriver not his. I found the stud pressed turned. The metal bit into wood with a sound I liked. Wren held the screws in her palm like medicine. "What's it for?" she asked. "Keys," I said. "And a ritual." "A ritual boundary," I said, and reached for the words I'd rehearsed at school the way I rehearse morning greetings. A boundary is a doorway you decide who crosses. Not a wall, a decision. If we hang our keys here every day when we come in, we're practicing remembering what belongs to us and what doesn't. We can still share. We just won't pretend the door isn't there. She nodded as if she'd been waiting to be given the correct name for something she'd already felt. Evan stood behind us, arms folded, watching like a man trying to guess the trick. I handed Wren my set of keys. She hung them on the new brass curve and stepped back. The sound metal meeting metal was unremarkable and perfect. "Can I draw around it?" she asked. Later, I said, smiling. "When we know what shape it wants." Before bed, I opened the laptop and drafted one more email this time, a list of the accounts and the dates I wanted statements for plain as a grocery run. At the bottom, I wrote, "Please confirm receipt." I hit send and watched the blue whoosh, like a kite heading for weather that no longer scared me. At Wren's doorway, the little house light glowed. "What's a boundary again?" she asked from her bed eyes, open in the almost dark. "A doorway we decide," I said. "Some nights the kindest thing is to close it. Some nights the kindest thing is to open it. And tonight? Tonight we close it," I said, "and keep our own air." She sighed. Her soft animal sigh turned on her side and fell asleep. Back in the kitchen, I lit the candle at last. The wick caught and steadied. Evan watched it like a debate. "Fire risk," he said by reflex. "Not tonight," I said. "Not anymore." He looked at the index card by the blue mug at the brass hook where our keys hung like small, bright promises at the door that had stopped pretending it was only a rectangle of wood. "You're different," he said, not admiring, not accusing, just noticing. "No," I said, and this time the word held both pressure and release. "I'm the same. I'm just not quiet in the places that ask for my voice." He didn't answer. The room was done with our voices. I blew out the candle one practiced breath and watched the smoke rise clean and then clear. The line was drawn, not with tape, with use, with keys, with a password written where anyone could reach it, with 3 small no's that did not need explanation. The house learned the shape by the way we moved inside it. And so did I. How do you tell apology from weather that just changed coats? The week after I hung the brass hook and asked for logins arrived with gestures. Flowers big enough to hide behind a bakery cake we didn't need calendar invites with hearts instead of details. I put the bouquet beside the unlit candle and watched how quickly peonies lower their heads. I wanted to be persuaded by petals. I also wanted our numbers to make sense. His mother called in the voice she uses for disasters that can be managed if the right woman becomes very small. "Marriage is hard work," she said. "Don't air private things. Boys will be boys." I told her we'd go through the accounts calmly after homework. She made calmly sound like an accusation. "Good girls don't need paper," she added. "Good girls grow into good women who like receipts," I thought, and let that be the end. At school, my students wrote about tone, how a sentence tilts depending on where you said it. At home, Apology wore cologne and asked about my day. He put a hand on my back while I rinsed the blue mug and leaned in to kiss my neck like muscle memory could fix math. Talk first, I said as simple as a light switch. The tremor moved through him the way it had at his mother's table, the body recognizing a rule had changed. I am talking, he murmured. Not with documents, I said. With truth. He booked a cabin 2 hours away, no phones, just us. I can't be somewhere I can't be reached, I said. Ren. It's just a weekend, he argued. It's just a rule, I said. We don't go quiet to fix the quiet. Ren watched like a scientist gathering data testing when it was safe to make a joke. She started hanging her key on the brass hook without being asked, whispering boundary ritual, as if naming the shape could keep it from slipping. I didn't correct her. We were building muscle memory on purpose. The chorus arrived, sister texts, cousin DMs, keep it inside, forgive quickly, be grateful for a man who provides. I answered the same way every time we're working through it. The fewer words I used, the more they tried to hand me scripts. Silence doesn't always feed a fire. Sometimes it starves it. When he finally replied to my access email, it came in 2 parts. The first held some usernames, 2 wrong, 1 missing. The second was a flood of explanations written so fast the punctuation tripped consolidation float year-end timing back. Soon didn't want to worry you. I sent a simple thanks and a list of the statements I still needed, dates, account numbers, the magic words, paper trail. The request itself was the politeness. He arrived home with peonies and a guilty grin ready to swap evidence for petals. They reminded me of you, he said. Stubborn and soft. Stubborn isn't the insult you think, I said, and set the peonies beside the candle like they were both witnesses. He set napkins like fans turned on music, finally lit the candles he used to pinch out. No more Cold Wars, he said. We're in this together. I let him hold my hand for a slow count, then took it back. Together means transparent, I said. No moves that depend on my not looking. He tried a new angle. I talked to a friend. He says do more grand gestures. Your friend is describing love bombing, I told him. Flooding someone with sweetness to stop them from naming a harm. I'm trying to be good to you, he said. Be true with me, I answered. That's different. He pivoted to Ren, sugary and cinematic. Daddy-daughter day this weekend, he announced. Arcade and milkshakes. Ren looked at me and I nodded because a child's joy is not a currency I trade in. Put it on the calendar, I said. Pickups and drop-offs in writing. He smiled like I was a clerk issuing permits. Your mother is very procedural, he told her. My mother is careful, she said. The tiny correction made him flinch. On Thursday, his mother invited us to dinner to put this silliness to bed. I told her we'd scheduled a call with the credit union. You don't bring outsiders into family business, she said. Money institutions are not outsiders to money, I answered, and let the house hold the quiet. On speaker, North River verified both our identities and confirmed what the chat had suggested. Summit Reserve is an external account. Custodial withdrawals aren't automatic. Notifications can go to all owners upon request. Yes, please, I said and gave my email so the future would know which voice asked. After the call, he cut limes like a man who might be good at this if he'd started earlier. I'm embarrassed, he said. Good, I answered not unkindly. Embarrassment is a bridge if you walk it. It's a wall if you live there. He poured seltzer into my blue mug and slid it across the island. The mug made its small bell sound. You're here. The love bomb weather lasted a week. I practiced yes to what belonged to me and no to what asked for my silence. I accepted flowers, declined cabins. I ate the dinner he cooked and insisted on speakerphone. I moved my paycheck to my account and put the shared bills in a document he couldn't edit without leaving tracks. I slept with the candle unlit on nights I didn't need a witness and lit it when I did. I kissed him on the cheek with gratitude and did not offer forgiveness as a coupon. On Saturday, when he brought Wren home smelling like fryer oil and joy, she tugged my sleeve and whispered, "He tried to buy me a necklace and told me not to tell." My chest tightened, then remembered its rule pressure release. "What did you say?" I asked. "We don't keep stomach ache secrets," she said, proud and a little scared. "Good," I said. "We'll tell him together." We did. He stared at us like a pair of women on a shore he couldn't reach by shouting from his boat. That night when he reached for me in bed with the gentleness that used to flood me, I put my hand over his and said, "Talk first." He trembled the same small quake and started to, then didn't. We lay there like two sides of a river listening to the house breathe. In the dark, the little house nightlight threw its square of gold into the hall, like a promise you can only see when the bigger lights are off. So how do you tell apology names a hurt and changes a habit? Weather asks you to pretend you imagined the rain. I fell asleep counting the difference the way a teacher counts heads after a fire drill, slowly, carefully, not out of fear, but responsibility. The blue mug would be there in the morning. So would the brass hook with our keys like alarms made gentle. So would the candle, either lit or not, depending on whether I needed a witness or only myself. What do kids call the weather when adults insist it's sunny? In the morning, Wren sharpened 2 pencils and wrote a poem at the kitchen table while I packed her lunch. The candle stayed unlit, but I could feel it waiting. She titled it in block letters, "A House with Too Many Doors." She didn't ask how to spell anything, which is how I knew she'd been writing it in her head for days. "Do you want me to read it?" she asked. "Only if you want to," I said. "You can keep this one for yourself." She read anyway, brisk to outrun nerves. A house with doors that open by themselves. A house that whispers when no one's around. A house where windows are painted on. A mother who carries a match she doesn't always light. A girl who hides the spare key in her shoe. She didn't say father. She didn't have to. The last line was a question: when we leave, will the door follow us? I touched the scar along my wrist pressure, then release. "That's good work," I said. "What do you want to do with it? Open mic is tonight?" she said, casual. "Ms. Hale says I should read. Do you want to?" "I want people to hear me and not look at you to see if it's okay." "That's a good wanting," I said. "We'll go." At drop-off, she tapped the brass hook the way some people knock on wood, then let the keys settle. After school, Wren rehearsed while I poured water into my blue mug. She didn't want feedback. She wanted company. I tucked a pencil behind her ear like armor made from ordinary things. "What if I cry?" she asked. "You can," I said. "You don't have to narrate it." "What if people get mad? Anger is a weather report," I said. "You don't have to dance in it." She nodded like a scientist logging conditions. The community center smelled like gym varnish and orange slices. Folding chairs made a soft thunder. Wren's name came early. She stood on the taped X, too small for the mic, until a teen volunteer lowered it. She didn't look at me. That was the first miracle. She planted her feet and read like she'd enlisted the room as witness before it knew the assignment. The lines from our kitchen took on scaffolding. If you listened, you could almost see the house. At the question line, she paused one heartbeat and didn't swallow the silence. When she finished, she didn't bow. She stepped back like a person who has crossed a threshold and trusts the floor. Applause surprised her. Praise isn't the point I tell my students, but it doesn't hurt when you've told the truth and the world answers, "I heard you." I texted Evan, she read. She did fine, and put my phone away. He didn't reply. The not reply used to feel like a cliff. Tonight it felt like weather moving through a sky I don't control. Driving home, we cracked the windows because air feels truer when it moves. The night was one long exhale. Wren held the poem on her knees as if paper could jump at stoplights. "Does it make you mad?" she asked. "What I read?" "It makes me proud," I said. "And steady." "Does it make you want to leave?" "It makes me want to keep us with ourselves," I said. "Sometimes that means staying. Sometimes it means moving. Tonight it means naming. Are we in trouble?" She asked, then answered herself. "We're not. Trouble is when you hide. Ms. Hale says naming is science." "She's not wrong," I said. "Courage doesn't always feel brave. Mostly it feels like saying one true thing and breathing beside it while your body waits to see if the room will keep standing." She rested her head against the window and watched our streetlights arrive through the trees. "I think I did that," she said to the glass. "You did." At home, she hung her key on the brass hook and pressed it with her finger as if a boundary could ring like a bell. We left the candle unlit. Ordinary light could testify. Evan wasn't home. A note on the island offered traffic and a doodled heart. Wren put her poem on the fridge with a magnet and stood back like a curator considering a wall. "Can I sleep with the little house light on?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Let it keep watch." I tucked her in and stood in the doorway, because doorways are where mothers do their best work. She closed her eyes and opened them once more. "If we leave," she said, revising her last line, "does the door follow us, or do we carry a new one?" "We carry ourselves," I said. "Doors recognize us either way." She nodded, satisfied that physics might be personal after all. Her breath rounded out and softened. I pulled the door almost shut and left the nightlight square of gold to do what small lights do, mark edges without performing. In the quiet, I took the shoebox from behind the scarves and added the credit union transcript and the timeline. I wrote October 22nd. Wren read, "Didn't look for me. Room held. Paper doesn't need apologies. It needs dates." When Evan finally came in, he set his keys on the counter instead of the hook. The old reflex, hang them myself, lifted its head and lay down. "Keys go here now," I said, like pointing out where the plates live. He hesitated the length of a habit, then looped them on the brass curve. The sound was small. My relief was not. How was it he asked, meaning the reading, meaning the weather? "Good," I said. She told the truth. The room stayed. He swallowed like a man with a pill he wasn't sure he chose. "I'm glad," he said, and I believed the part of him that meant it. We stood in the kitchen, two people not fixing the whole story in a night. I lit the candle for ceremony, not proof, and watched the flames stand up. He reached toward it, then thought better. He looked at my wrist, at the pale scar he knows, but doesn't understand, at the blue mug drying upright like a small roof over a small circle of air. "Are we leaving?" he asked, barely above the refrigerator's hum. "We're staying with ourselves," I said the sentence from the car finding its home. "If you can stay with yourself here too, then yes. If you can't, then no." He nodded like a person realizing the test has questions only he can answer. In the hall, the little house light glowed like a polite lighthouse. On the fridge, a poem did what poems do when you let them hold shape without holding anyone hostage. I blew out the candle and watched the smoke unmake itself. The air felt clearer because we'd named it. Quiet isn't empty when you can hear your own footsteps. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the doorway a moment longer, practicing the part where thresholds don't scare me. What do you do when someone tries to enlist the neighborhood as a laugh track? The cul-de-sac smelled like charcoal and wet grass, Kids skidding between folding tables, someone's playlist, wobbling between old rock and clean pop. I carried potato salad like a person determined to be ordinary. Evan carried himself like a person who wins rooms by momentum. He kissed 3 cheeks in a row and said we were on the mend, a phrase that sounds like work, even when it's just weather changing its coat. He found the grill space and an audience of dads. I talked with Lila from down the block about school supply drives and the way markers go dry in clusters. A paper plate bent where I didn't want it to. I held it steady. When people ask what grade you teach, they often want stories timed to make them laugh. I gave them one about a boy who insists on standing to think because ideas travel better when you're upright. It landed gentle. I was content to be boring in public. Then he did the thing again, the turn toward me that looks like inclusion until you see the stage lights. Ask Lainey, he said, flipping a burger like a coin. She's a teacher. Great with kids, not so hot with money. He grinned to tell them he meant no harm. I mean, bless her, she thinks cash back is an investment strategy. A few chuckled because laughter obeys gravity before conscience. I felt the old reflex to shrink so the moment could pass rise and wait for me to choose. I pressed my thumb to the soft inside of my wrist where the pale scar is, and my body remembered its rule pressure, then release. I kept my voice low enough that people would have to want to hear it. Why did the college account show withdrawals on the days you took your mother shopping? I asked. No heat, no extras, just the sentence. Grill noise dimmed as if the air itself leaned closer. The playlist stumbled into a quiet beat. Evan looked at me with a smile that belonged to another room. Consolidations, he said quickly. Tax advantages, timing. I nodded once. Then it will be simple to show, I said. I lifted the tote at my feet, felt the manila envelope inside, and let my hand fall without taking it out. Not here, I added, so he heard I wasn't trying to win a crowd. At home, on paper, on speaker. Someone cleared a throat into the silence, which is what you do when you realize you've signed up to watch something you can't clap for. Lila looked at the ground long enough to find her balance. A dad I only knew as Yellow Kayak suddenly remembered he'd promised to check on hot dog buns. The stillness that followed wasn't applause or censure. It was the sound a room makes when the script changes and people don't know their lines. Evan tipped a burger onto a plate metal on paper, a soft ring pretending to be a bell. Don't do this, he muttered, smiling for anyone not close enough to hear. We already are, I said, matching his volume. Family, he said, like it was a spell. Facts. I said like it was air. I took 2 steps back and made myself ordinary again. Asked a child if she wanted more watermelon. Complimented a dog's bandana. Let my pulse climb the rungs of my breath and come down on the other side. The world didn't tilt. It made room. Later, as dusk softened the edges, women came by in errands. Not a parade, not a rescue, just the small economy of those who've weathered things. Lila handed me a container of brownies and tucked under the foil a card with her accountant's name. He's good at untangling, she said, as if we were talking about necklaces. Brie from the corner, not the credit union Brie. The universe has jokes past me, a folded sticky note with the words, ask for monthly statements auto-sent and a check mark. Janelle, who coaches soccer and knows where to rent bounce houses cheap, said if you ever need 2 hours to sit with a screen and no one asking you for a glass of milk drop, ren with us. None of them said the word. I didn't either. You don't owe a label to people who are willing to stand beside you without one. On the walk home, Ren dribbled a ball along the sidewalk cracks, counting the skips under her breath. You didn't get small, she said, not looking at me. which is how she asks permission to be proud. I didn't, I said. It turns out you can answer a performance without becoming one. At our door, she hung her key on the brass hook and flicked it with a fingertip. The sound was a tiny chime. Ritual. Inside the blue mug waited on the rack upside down over its circle of air. I righted it and poured water, listened to the ordinary bell of ceramic on wood. Evan came in after us, set his keys on the counter, then after a beat relocated them to the hook, as if the metal curve had gravity he couldn't argue with. I was kidding, he said lightly, which is what you say when the laugh didn't land where you aimed it. I heard, I said. People were kind enough not to laugh. I'm trying, he said, and for a second the trying looked like a person instead of a tactic. You keep making me the bad guy. There aren't villains, I said. There are choices. I'm making different ones. He rubbed his face. Can we not fight we aren't? I said. We're naming. The rest is what it is. I set the manila envelope on the table, the candle beside it. I didn't light the wick. Witnesses don't have to be flame. When he went to shower, the house sagged into honest quiet. Wren wandered in with a stack of soccer trading cards and arranged them by teams that wear blue. If we had to go fast, she said in the voice kids use to protect themselves from answers, what would you pack? 2 suitcases, I said. 1 for useful, 1 for kind. She thought about it. Useful jeans, hoodie toothbrush. Kind the small turtle. The turtle's non-negotiable, I agreed. We made a practice list without calling it that. Birth certificates and a copy of the lease. The school contact sheet. The little house nightlight if we could unscrew it. If not, we'd buy another and paint around it later. The poems. The blue mug, though it would be heavy in a way that makes thieves choose something else. The candle if there was room. Otherwise you can buy fire anywhere. When she went to brush her teeth, I pulled 2 suitcases from the hall closet, the noisy zippers kind, and set them open under the bed. Not packed, not yet. Not drama. Capacity. The sound of fabric sliding over carpet was quieter than fear. I added a folder of papers to the closet shoebox, Bree's chat transcript printed and dated. The accountant's card. A page that read in my neatest hand, October 28th barbecue joke about teachers and money, asked question. Room stayed. I slid the box back behind scarves the color of winter. I told myself the truth I could bear, I was not leaving tonight. I was practicing being a person who could. When Wren came to say goodnight, she saw the suitcase mouths under the bed and did not flinch. 2, she said. Useful and kind. Just in case I said. In case of what? In case of us, I said. In case we need a little room to stay with ourselves. She nodded like someone who understands a map without needing to walk it immediately. Can I draw a door on the box? She asked. Tomorrow, I said. After homework. Evan came back in with damp hair and the smell of soap that used to be the bridge between us. He looked at the table, at the unlit candle, at the envelope at the hook, with our keys at the bed where the suitcases waited like quiet animals who'd learned not to bark. Is this what we are now? He asked. We are what our daily choices make, I said. Tomorrow we choose to put the numbers back where they belong. He wanted a fight I wouldn't give him. He wanted a compliment I couldn't afford. He went to bed and turned to the wall. I washed the blue mug and set it upside down a small roof over air I was learning to value. Before I turned out the kitchen light, I stood in the doorway and looked at the little house nightlight down the hall, its polite square. The door frame held like frames do not to trap a picture, but to give it edges so you can tell what you're seeing. I blew air across the candle's cold wick and watched nothing happen, which was somehow exactly what I needed. There is a way to be ready without running. It looks like paper where a fight would go. It sounds like keys finding the hook by habit. It feels like a scar you can press and release until your breathing takes the hint. It's 2 suitcases under a bed, one labeled useful in your head, the other kind. It's saying one true thing in daylight and letting the quiet hold its shape when the laughter fails to arrive. In the next room, my daughter slept with a small turtle under her palm, as if she'd caught the world and planned to let it go in the morning. I turned off the light and left the doorway to guard what we had learned. You don't have to light the candle to know where it is. You don't have to leave to practice how. Readiness is not departure. It's respect. What do you call the moment when a plan stops being paper? For me, it was Tuesday at 4:12 p.m. when the email from a listing popped up: short-term rental, month-to-month, 2 bedrooms, walking distance to school, and my body did that small yes before my mind tried to slow it down. I called and used my teacher voice, the one that gets field trips approved and subs to show on snow threat days. The manager said the last tenant left Saturday. Keys could be mine by Thursday if the deposit cleared. Bring proof of income and a photo ID, she said. Proof and efface the 2 things I still owned outright. I printed the application at school because the copier there doesn't jam if you speak nicely. In the staff room, I slid forms under a stack of rubric copies and drank water from my blue mug, as if that could make courage taste ordinary. I put the lease in the shoebox with the timeline and wrote October 30th, applied for short-term rental near school. Month to month, keys Thursday. At home, I told Ren first because you tell the person most affected before you tell the person who will audition his feelings. 90 days, I said, holding out both hands so she could see the size of the number. Space to breathe, not a final anything. We'll be close to school. 2 suitcases, useful and kind. Your turtle goes first. She looked at the brass hook like a compass. What about Dad? We tell him tonight, I said. We tell him the plan, the why, and the date we'll talk about after. We use the word space, not punishment. What if he cries, she asked. Then we don't manage his face, I said. We manage our feet. He came home with a grocery bag and a story. I let both land. While he unpacked pasta and optimism, I kept my back against the doorway, the way you do when you're learning to stand where your exit is. 90 days, I said, when his story put down its last period. I've leased a place near school. We'll split the week for dinners, keep the calendar visible, and move money for rent from the shared account with notes. We'll revisit before the holidays. He laughed, then stopped, then laughed again as if he'd bitten into an apple that kept changing taste. Absolutely not, he said, then softened his mouth the way he thinks tenderness is a tool. Sweetheart, we're not separating what to prove a point to survive assumptions, I said, to let the numbers breathe without the performance. He called me dramatic, which means inconvenient when he's tired. Then he tried a better word. Panicked. Careful, I said. And clear. He paced. Rage flared and misfired. He sat down and practiced sorrow. Is this because of the barbecue? Because of my mother? Because I messed up with the transfers? The sorrow almost worked. The version of me that loves wounded men reached for a blanket that wasn't there anymore. It's because our home turned into a stage, I said. And because you keep rewriting the script and calling it love. 90 days is a hallway, not a cliff. He put his head in his hands and found water. You're breaking our family, he said into his palms. I'm building a roof that isn't made of my silence, I said, and didn't reach for him. My feet stayed near the door. My hands stayed empty. He tried a last thing, small and mean. You'll never manage on that teacher salary. The room went still the way classrooms do when a kid says the insult that shows where the bruise is. I didn't climb onto the insult and ride it. I named the next brick. The deposit clears tomorrow, I said. I'll set up mail forwarding and a P.O. box so report cards don't wander. We'll share the new address for school pickup. You'll have the code. We're not hiding. We're breathing. He stood. I won't help you move. I didn't ask. I said, you can keep helping by sending me Ren's dentist reminder and the login for the utility portal. Or you can sit with your feelings and I'll do it anyway. He went to the bedroom and shut the door because slamming would have been too honest. I exhaled into the quiet and texted Lila Thursday evening, "Can you watch a box for 5 minutes while I carry another?" She replied with 13 heart emojis and the words, "We've got you pizza on us." The next day, I opened a P.O. box in a post office that smells like tape and old air. The clerk slid me a key and said, "Box 218. A key is a small metal permission you can hold. I copied the number onto 3 index cards, school bank my wallet, and wrote in the timeline October 31st, P.O. Box 218. Clerk named Margot, blue counter. I called the utility company and listened to the hold music the way you listen to weather-irritated patient unsurprised. I turned on electric and water at the new place. I ordered 2 cheap brass hooks shaped like question marks and a nightlight shaped like a small house. If our rituals were going to move, they would need places to land. After school, Ren and I started with the suitcase labeled useful. Jeans, hoodie, toothbrush, sneakers, chargers, 2 towels, a set of sheets. Pack 3 books, I said. 1 fast, 1 slow, 1 you'd read aloud to people you like. She chose a graphic novel, a hard book about a girl who learns to fix clocks, and the poetry book she'd started to make friends with. The turtle rode in a shoebox with air holes because kindness has to breathe too. We carried boxes in the late afternoon when the sky goes honest and wide over our street. Lila waved from her porch and took the lamp I almost talked myself out of bringing. Janelle texted a selfie from our new front step with 2 thumbs up and the caption "Neighbors already like the turtle." Bree from the corner met us in the parking lot with a roll of paper towels and a candle not shaped like anything. "Just in case you need ceremony," she said. Inside the apartment smelled like fresh paint and something citrus trying its best. The rooms were small and blank the way new notebooks are. I set the blue mug on the counter. In our kitchen, it has always looked chipped and practical. Here it looked almost elegant, a little museum piece with a job. I put a brass hook by the door and screwed it into a stud with the small screwdriver that wasn't his. Ren hung our keys and pressed them to make the sound. Different house, same ritual, she said, which is another way of saying we didn't leave ourselves behind. We made a bed. We unfurled a cheap rug that immediately made the floor sound like a room instead of a warehouse. Ren plugged in the little house nightlight, and the square of gold it threw onto the hallway felt like a cousin of home, not an imposter. She taped the turtle's shoebox near an outlet so his lamp could keep him warm. We put the candle on the sill because witnesses deserve views. I didn't light it. Ceremony can wait until there's breath to mark. Back at the old house, Evan stood in the doorway as we moved past him with our arms full. He tried every mask in his drawer, astonished, offended, weary, too cool, magnanimous. They clanked against each other. "This is insane," he said. "You can't just—" "We can," I said. And we are. He followed us to the street once, then stopped at the sidewalk as if the property line had grown thorns. On the second trip, he stayed inside. On the third, he texted, "You're making a mistake." I didn't reply. The line between a statement and a hook is whether you grab it. At the apartment, we ate pizza on the floor and called it a table. Ren leaned against the wall and drew a tiny door around the nightlight with painter's tape. Just until we paint, she said, as if this were clearly step 3 in a plan we'd always had. When I took her back to the old house for bedtime at her dad's place, because we were splitting the week like a classroom schedule, we practiced our new rule handoffs in the doorway calendars matched no whispered negotiations in the driveway. He opened the door looking like a man who didn't know where to set his mouth. He saw the bag with the turtle's extra lettuce and rolled his eyes, then took it gently anyway. Wren slipped past him, kissed my cheek in the precise place I always pretend not to wait for, and went in. On my way out, I touched the brass hook we'd hung weeks ago, the one that made our door honest. Keys hung there like punctuation. 8 tomorrow, I said, and he nodded because time is the only thing he can't turn into a debate. Back in the apartment, the quiet felt like a person I trusted. I washed the blue mug and set it on the thrifted shelf. I turned off the overhead light that made everything feel like a questionnaire and let the nightlight square hold the hallway. I pulled the candle closer and didn't strike a match. I didn't need a witness yet. I wanted to see if the dark could be enough. In bed under sheets that smelled like soap, no one had opinions about my wrist rested against the cool cotton and forgot to hum. I breathed in the kind of silence that doesn't ask for obedience, only presence. From the next apartment, a laugh rose and disappeared, another life being ordinary. I picked up my phone and wrote one more line in the timeline, November 1st, first night. No flame. Slept. You could call it leaving. It felt like staying with ourselves in a place that had room. The door closed softly. The little house light did its job. I fell asleep without the candle, not because ritual failed me, but because I finally didn't need proof. How bright is the room where paper decides how a child will breathe? I wore the thrifted jacket, the one he once said made me look like the sun, because I wanted a memory that didn't ask permission. Coffee into the blue mug, a small ceramic bell against wood to say, I'm here. On my way out, I touched the brass hook. Boundary. Mediation was carpet that forgives shoes and fluorescent lights that don't. The mediator Joyce had the calm of a substitute who knows the lesson will land if the room stays steady. Numbers first, she said. Names later. I liked her immediately. At the long table, I set out my folder. The shoebox made portable timeline North River transcript statements my separate checking account. Paper doesn't posture. It arrives and waits. Evan's knee bounced until he heard the chair. We're here for temporary arrangements, Joyce said. Finances, housing, parenting time. She looked at us like a librarian waiting for us to open the book we brought. When she asked about living, I said we'd leased a month-to-month near school for 90 days space and stability. I didn't say escape. She nodded as if the word space had done a kind thing for the air. Money next. I slid the ledger forward. Wren's 529 shows 4 transfers since July to an external account labeled Summit Reserve. Notifications now go to both devices. Paper trail requested. My voice was flat enough to walk on. Evan said consolidation and tax optimization with a tone that tried to sound like math. Joyce wrote transfers, disputed documentation requested. Humility suits a sentence. Parenting time we'd already been splitting the week at Threshold's calendars matched no driveway whispers. Handoffs at the door, I said. Joyce smiled. Thresholds keep rooms from blending into each other. She asked if Wren wanted to speak, not to decide, only to be heard. 11 is a border, but Wren has been drawing maps. She sat with her feet on the floor, hands under her thighs. I saw a transfer with my name. She said the same sentence from his mother's table now with edges. Please don't call me dramatic. I was there. She watched Joyce's pen, not us. Evan's mouth pulled tight. The tremor ran through him again, Clear Joyce said. Clarity is a kindness. In the hallway, a vending machine turned chips into stained glass. I pressed the pale scar along my wrist and felt only a quiet hum, the body remembering its instruction pressure, then release. Proposals, Joyce said when we sat down. Evan offered a cabin, a reset, fewer forms, promises to do better about communications. Joyce lifted an eyebrow. Temporary structure first. Intentions can ride along. Mine were plain, separate accounts maintained, all custodial transactions mirrored to both phones. Joint access to payroll and utilities in writing. A shared spreadsheet visible to both with tracked edits. Mediation again in 6 weeks. No unilateral purchases above an agreed amount. A parenting schedule anchored to school nights with flexibility for Ren's events. Counseling if he wants a place for feelings that won't be measured in decimals. Hearing my own voice steady felt like walking a hallway I'd built and finally trusted to hold. It makes me feel monitored. He said about alerts. It makes her feel visible, I said. His hands opened and found nothing useful to hold. Joyce turned to Ren. Any sentence you want this paper to remember, Ren thought 3 beats. Don't lie about me, she said. And don't make me keep a secret that hurts my stomach. Joyce wrote both underline the second and drew a tiny door in the margin. Ritual recognizes itself. We priced the ordinary rent, utilities, groceries, the turtle's lamp, co-pays, soccer fees, pictures. Paper made them less personal without making them less true. Evan volunteered to handle bills for efficiency. Joyce shook her head gently. The person who says they're better with money doesn't automatically get the money, she said. The person who keeps clear records does. She glanced at my folder. I didn't look smug. I looked at the table and felt my pulse slow to a speed I could grade to. Joyce read our bullets back in present tense, the tense of habits we intend to keep, and circled dates on a wall calendar. I'll file this as a memorandum of understanding, she said, and email you both. Keep communications in writing. If you speak by phone, follow with an email to confirm. Judges like tidy trails. People do too. She asked North River to send the custodial activity log by mail to both addresses. 2 copies, she said, tapping her pen twice as if to teach the room its new rhythm. Time to initial. My hand didn't shake. I signed Laney Hart. The ink didn't feather. The line held. Evan signed with his jaw working like he was chewing a sentence he wished he could spit back. Joyce slid copies into 2 envelopes and wrote our names, as if legible handwriting could model fairness. Then this sentence that loosened a knot I hadn't noticed calcify. Stability tends to favor the parent who already built it, Joyce said. Not praise. A weather report. I thought of the brass hook, the little house nightlight, the blue mug set like a roof over air, the candle we light for ceremony and leave cold for proof. Practice had been preparing this room. Outside the afternoon was the hard kind of bright that makes everything look honest. In the lot, Evan tried to recruit me back into a better version of his narration. You're making me into someone he said. No, I said. You are someone. I'm naming the weather. He swallowed and finally asked a useful question. What do you need from me tonight? On-time pickups and drop-offs. No gifts that ask for silence. Put your keys on the hook without being told. Answer North River when it emails. He looked almost relieved to have a list. Okay, he said. Not surrender. A truce with reality. At the apartment, I sat in the car to let breath arrive after body. Inside the envelope went on the counter. Water into the blue mug. The small bell of ceramic against wood told me I was allowed to be here. I lit the candle, gratitude, not evidence, and wrote the day's line November 14th mediation. Wren spoke. Agreement signed. Stability favors the builder. Wren hung her key and showed me a doodle of a doorway with a yellow stripe. So the door knows where it is, she said. It will, I said. We stood in the square of the nightlight's gold until our shoulders remembered down. Before bed, I blew out the candle with one practiced breath and watched the smoke rise and clear. The room didn't need proof. It needed maintenance. I rinsed the blue mug and set it upside down a small roof over the air we sleep in, and pressed my wrist not because it hurt, but because sometimes the body wants to thank the lesson that held. The months didn't arrive like chapters. They arrived as errands and ordinary things that knew their names. Winter let go of the trees, and our apartment learned our steps. We kept the nightlight's little house, and Wren painted a thin yellow stripe around the door she'd taped in blue, a boundary you could see even with your eyes tired. The brass hook by our door developed muscle memory. Keys found it without me asking. When I came home and set the blue mug on the counter, the small ring of ceramic on wood felt like a bell and a promise. On the sill the candle lived by the window, a witness we lit for ceremony and left cold when we didn't need proof. We kept the agreements. Joyce's email lived in our inboxes like a quiet chaperone. North River mailed 2 copies of the custodial activity log to 2 addresses, and the ledger showed the transfers back, each one labeled in a handwriting that tried to look like mine and didn't. Summit Reserve disappeared from the page. Notifications arrived on both our phones without drama. To confirm, we wrote after phone calls like people who'd learned the room holds better when you put the corners down. Evan started arriving at handoffs with a list instead of a mood. May I take her to practice early, replaced I'm taking her. Is Tuesday okay for the dentist replaced reminders I never saw? He hung his keys on our hook without being told, as if the house had taught him the shape he needed to meet. He went to a class for parents, the kind held in a church basement that smells like coffee and crayons. Wren told me he brought a notebook and asked the leader, "How do I apologize without asking for a favor back?" I didn't hear that myself. I heard it later from Wren, who relayed it with the seriousness of a person who knows which questions matter. When he apologized to her, he tried 3 times. The first 2 were about how he felt. The third one was a sentence she could hold. "I moved money with your name on it without telling you. That was wrong. I won't ask you to keep a secret to protect me." She watched his mouth, then his hands, then the floor. She said, "Okay," in a voice the size of a door that fits a person and not a crowd. He didn't ask for a hug. He didn't call her brave as if bravery were a prize he could pin on her shirt. He asked, "Is there anything you need me to repeat?" She said, "that you won't make me keep stomachache secrets." He said it again slower, and I watched the sentence become theirs. At school, my students wrote about revision, the kind that cuts what doesn't belong, and the kind that reveals what was there. I wore the denim jacket he once said made me look like the sun, and felt nothing but cotton and memory. In my room, I stapled permission slips and taught clauses like building blocks. At home, I learned when to answer and when to let silence hold. I said yes to what made our days run, and no to invitations that asked me to shrink so someone else could grow. If this sounds like triumph, it wasn't. It was maintenance, and it felt like dignity. Dignity is not loud. It is a woman rinsing her blue mug and leaving it upside down to dry because she trusts her mornings now. Sometimes in the old house, his mother still arranged dinners, as if efficiency were a sacrament. We went when it served Wren, and we left before performance needed to be fed. The first time back, she placed the unlit centerpiece candle among silk leaves, No one laughed at salaries. No one asked me to bless thrift. When I said goodnight at the doorway, Evan's mother touched my arm, soft, sincere. "You've gotten very organized," she said, as if organization were a kind of charm. I got very clear, I said, and she nodded like a person who knows what clarity costs and is not ready to pay, but can recognize the receipt. At our place, Wren's turtle learned the window's hours. She taped her poems above her desk and added 2 lines to the one about the house, with too many doors, a door we painted ourselves, a window we opened without asking. She still hung her key and flicked it so the hook chimed. We built Saturday rituals you could set a clock by laundry library soup. On nights we needed ceremony, we lit the candle and watched the flame stand up. On nights we didn't, we let the dark be honest. The scar along my wrist faded to something you only see if you know to look. I still press it sometimes, not because it hurts, but because my body remembers what saved me. Pressure, then release. When the 90 days ended, we extended in 30-day increments until choosing felt like choice and not a quiz. We used the spreadsheets until the numbers steadied and the alerts bored us, which is what you want from alerts. He asked, not announced. I answered when answering served peace and declined when silence served truth. The apartment became our home by use, not by decree. The little house nightlight wasn't a symbol anymore. It was a light that kept the hallway kind to bare feet. One afternoon, the envelope from the clerk's office arrived with words that were more administrative than dramatic. Temporary orders continued. Parenting schedule maintained. Financial disclosures current. Mediation to reconvene in spring. I slid the paper into the folder without thinking about where the shoebox used to be. The folder was in a drawer now, not a hiding place. I was a woman who could find what she needed without a ritual of fear. On a mild Friday, I watched Evan watch Wren at soccer. He stood alone, hands in pockets, and did not narrate her to strangers. He clapped when every kid did something ordinary and good. When the game ended, he waited for her to spot him and run, and when she did, he bent to be small enough for her arms to go around. I saw him think of something to say and decide not to. Restraint is a skill. I could see him practicing it the way I practiced letting my answers be simple. That night he dropped her at our door on time, with his keys ready for the hook. The credit union sent another copy, he said, lifting an envelope like a peace offering that didn't require me to pretend. Good, I said. He looked past me at the candle on the sill and said nothing about fire. Progress is not a speech. It is a quiet room where no one is performing and the air stays easy. After dinner, Wren stood in the hallway with a paintbrush and a small jar of craft paint we'd bought for a school project. "Can I?" she asked, though she knew the answer. She added a second yellow stripe to the painted door around the nightlight, the kind you might find on a road that needs both direction and distance. There, she said. Now it looks like a door that remembers itself. She cleaned the brush carefully as if the bristles had feelings. Before bed, I took the blue mug to the doorway and stood with it warm in my hands, because warmth belongs in thresholds too. Outside the real door, the corridor was quiet in the way apartments learn to be when people respect thin walls. Inside, our hallway glowed with its small, polite square of gold. I didn't say a vow. I didn't need to. The house and I understood each other now. The candle would light when we wanted ceremony. The mug would hold whatever morning asked of me. The key would ring the hook. The door would stay a door open or closed by a person who knew she could walk through. If you came looking for a single moment where we returned to what we were, I can't give you that. We didn't return. We kept what was ours and let the rest be whether someone else can learn to name. We are not a victory story. We are a practice. My daughter tells one true thing and breathes beside it. I answer when it serves peace and fall silent when it serves truth. He asks more and announces less. The ledger is boring. The rooms are steady. The doorways are ours to keep. I finished my tea and set the mug down, listening for the small bell that tells me I exist in a room I chose. I turned off the lamp and let the little house light do its job. In the dark that wasn't empty, I touched the pale scar on my wrist and felt nothing but recognition. Then I walked to the door and stood for one more breath in the place where leaving and staying are the same posture if you own your feet. The handle was cool and ordinary. The quiet didn't ask me to prove anything. It let me be. I turned and went to bed. We slept with the candle unlit, not because we'd given up on witnesses, but because we didn't need one to know who we were. Word count, 11A8. Waiting for continue. A beautiful white woman, early 40s waist-up portrait, soft natural light at golden hour. She wears a simple heather gray teacher's sweater with a thrifted denim jacket. Calm, emotionally deep eyes, no smile. Subtle under-eye tiredness, faint wrist scar visible as she loosely holds a blue ceramic mug near a doorway. Background, a small apartment hallway with a nightlight shaped like a tiny house, its painted yellow door glowing softly. Brass key hook with keys hanging in frame. Cinematic, ultra-detailed realistic textures and skin. Shallow depth of field. 85mm lens EF2. True-to-life color. High-resolution sharp focus.